Hey, John, I understand we're getting a lot of feedback from viewers on portable soup, and they're having trouble.
Right. Here's a couple of comments from Keith Strand, and he's working on the portable soup. He says, I tried using oxtail because I couldn't find beef shank. I used a crock pot, and it worked well until I returned the broth and cooked it down to make a gelatin. After 2 days, it was not cooking down, so I raised the heat high to evaporate the liquid. I got it down to about a 1/4 inch, but it didn't gel. Was it the oxtail or something else I did? And then we talked to him again, and he responded. He says, after straining, I put the liquid back in the clean crock and turned it on low without the lid. It cooked for about 30 hours and didn't reduce much at all. I turned the crock on high, and it came to a light boil for about 8 hours, and it got to about a 1/4 inch or less. I turned off the crock, let it cool overnight, and it was like a black sludge. So, Kevin, what did he do wrong?
You know, I don't think it's the meat. You can use virtually any kind of meat with this.
Right.
Now, there are some meats that are better than others. We suggested the hock simply because it has a lot of connective tissue in it. Another good cut would be the brisket. Has a lot of collagen in it.
Okay.
And that's why you have to cook that particular cut so slow for it to be tender. So oxtail, that would have been a good choice. The tricky part here is in the gelatin itself. There's some really cool science that we're not going to get into in this video, but gelatin, there's a molecular bond to water,
Right.
and it's very sensitive to temperature. And if you raise the temperature only a little bit, then it becomes liquidous. And I'm talking like just over body temperature.
Right. And I think one of the things you got to remember here is something that they used we don't use today, but they used a lot in the 18th century, was hide glue. And hide glue is basically just gelatin in a little bit different form. But to use hide glue, you take these things that seem like a solid to you, just like opening up your Knox gelatin packets. You heat that up and it'll turn into a liquid. And they used it as a glue. Same thing is happening here.
Right. And he talks about how he cooked this in a crock pot for 30 hours and then cooked it some more on high and boiled it down to about a 1/4 inch.
Right.
The risk here is actually burning it. If you burn it,
and that's what's likely what happened.
Yeah.
When he moved it to the high, it burnt it instead of
right, and that will dramatically affect the flavor. The challenge here, and if you read all of the 18th century recipes, you can recognize the challenge in making portable soup. And that is driving off that last little bit of moisture. And you're actually never, it's going to take a long time to dry it all off.
Right.
Modern gelatins, the hard kind of gelatin, it's actually chemically treated to drive off
like extracting it.
Right.
Yeah, not just air.
Right. But in the 18th century, they would take it down so far, and then all of the recipes I've seen would call for the gelatin to be turned out onto a new wool flannel.
Right. So as soon as it did any kind of solidification, basically.
And then you would turn it for several days to slowly dry that last little bit of moisture off. We've had a lot of people suggest, stick it in a dehydrator. But the problem with that is a lot of dehydrators the temperature goes up.
Right. They actually have a little heater in there.
To around 100 degrees, that'll liquefy it.
Right.
So you really need to let this air dry, and I think
just a fan.
Or a fan.
Right. So like we talked about putting it on a cooling rack and just blowing air across it.
So I think if you were to reduce it down, depending on how much he started with, had he reduced that down even to a 1/2 inch and let it cool down completely, it most likely would have
solidified at that point. So maybe after the 30 hours or another 36 hours, say, or whatever, it'll start to gel up a little bit.
Right. Right. And once it gels, take it out, and don't try and get it hard with heat.
Right.
By driving off of that water. You just can't do it.
Right.
You can't do it.
So because it's fighting you, it's chemically bound with that water, the gelatin. It won't give it up in the same kind of a way. So.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, and we've had more than one viewer raise this same issue,
Right.
and it's not like you just can't boil the water completely off.
Right, it's counterintuitive.
Right,
You
it
think, oh, I'll add a whole bunch of heat to this, I'll drive the water off, and that just won't work.
It won't work.
So, and that's one of the reasons why it took us so long to actually do portable soup, because we tried it, and you tried it, you tried it again, it didn't work, and it's like, oh, this is what's going on.
Right.
So let's summarize this exactly. What did we do here, and what did he do wrong?
Okay, he tried to drive off all of the water using heat.
Right.
And he raised it up to high. He most likely ended up burning it, and you're just not going to be able to drive off that last little bit of water with heat. You have to let it air dry.
Right. Okay. So heat it for 30 hours, 36 hours.
John, the temperature up front isn't all that critical. You can stick your crock pot on high and boil it down to a degree. But it's that last bit. It's where you start getting down to the end. That's where you have to be careful not to burn it, and that's where it really needs to be turned down to low.
When it starts to gelatinize or when it starts to thicken up, so that it's a solid-ish, then put it out on the rack, air dry it.
Right.
Put a fan on it. Maybe even in front of an air conditioner that is, got dry air that draws,
as long as there isn't any heat.
Right. No heat, and try to actually kind of blowing the moisture off of it.
Yeah. And if you're trying to do this on a hot summer day and your kitchen is hot,
right, it may never solidify.
Right.
So let it really cool down. Maybe even put that broth in the refrigerator and see what it does.
Right.
So maybe at a cooler temperature, it will turn into the gelatin that you need, and then you want to start drying it off.
Right.
There we go. I hope this has helped. If you have any further questions, make sure to give us some comments down in the comment section, and we'd love to help you out with it. Thanks for watching.